Today we're going to be making an artwork that imitates the method of metalworking called repousse and chasing. And here are a couple examples of the finished works. If you are doing this in my class and you haven't watched the PowerPoint about this method, I would like you to stop the video, go and look at that information, and then come back to complete the project. When you are ready to work, what you will need is a cardboard circle, one of the patterns, a ruler, an eraser, some scissors, something to write with, and glue. Once we are done, then you will also be going to use some spray adhesive. If you're doing this at home, when I use spray adhesive, you could just use a glue stick or a glue product you have at home. You will also be using some ink, some waterproof ink. Also, if you're doing this at home, you can just skip this step. You'll need a paper towel or Kleenex and a piece of tin foil. So to start with, what you are going to do is cut out a cardboard circle and then take one of my patterns, which has been divided into 8ths, and lay it on the cardboard, mark center, and then make a mark in each place that I have made a little notch. That will divide it into 8ths for you. If you're doing this at home, the easiest way to divide your circle into 8ths is to fold it in half. Fold it in half again, which would be 4ths. Fold it in half again, which would be 8ths. Open it up. Make a little hole in the center where all the folds meet, and then just cut a little notch at the end of each fold, and then you will have your pattern of 8ths. The reason that we are doing 8ths is we are making a radial design, which means it's a design that balances around center. So it's equally balanced all around a center point. By marking it in 8ths, it helps you to keep that in mind, and it helps you to keep it balanced. What you're going to do then is you need to cut out using either cardboard scraps, or in our case here at school, we have these scraps of jar openers that a printing company donated to us. We are using these because they have an interesting texture, but anything that has a little bit of thickness will work. So this, cardboard scraps, whatever you have around. Then on those scraps, what you need to do is trace and cut out shapes to create some type of radial design. So I might take a circle, and it's best to start with something in the center. And then I will trace and cut out numerous shapes. So maybe I'd have some leaf shapes, and because it's radial, you either need to do it in every triangle or every other triangle. That will keep it balanced. So maybe I do leaves, and I cut out just some oval shapes here. They almost look like flower petals. And you're going to keep growing from the center until you get to the edge of your circle. Always thinking about it needs to be a radial design. Now, a way to make it more interesting in the end is to layer up these shapes. So I have a circle in the middle, maybe I'd put another circle there. Or I could cut out a circle and put it in the center of each of those. Don't worry about the color. The color will not matter in the end. It's the depth that's going to create the interest. And you can see from this one, if you look closely, you can see that each of these flower petal looking shapes has 3 dots on it. This person took a lot of time to really build up some interesting shapes. There's a diamond with a circle on it here. There's all kinds of things. So take your time and think about how can you layer up different shapes to make it interesting. Now, once you're done with that, comes the final steps. Please ignore the yellow. We were experimenting with something, and the experiment kind of went awry. But this one is very nice. You can see all of the details on it. So I'm going to use it for an example. The first thing I did, and I did this off camera, I sprayed this with the spray adhesive. And remember, spray adhesive makes a mess and there's overspray. So if you're at school, I have a station set up for you in the back of the room to use that. If you are using it at home, if you happen to have it at home, make sure that you ask an adult where they want you to use that. Then you're going to take a piece of foil and you're going to take the side that's not quite as shiny and put that towards the circle. Now, if you mess up and you put the wrong side up, it's really not that big of a deal, but try to get the shinier side up. And then you're just going to gradually rub from the center until you get all of your shapes to show. Don't try to rub it all at once because sometimes that will rip the foil. If you do rip the foil, just be careful in that position. Just go on. It'll be okay. So I'm just going to keep rubbing and rubbing and then going back in and rubbing again and pressing. And I'm going to keep working on this. Now I'm going to pause the camera and I'll finish rubbing this and then I'll show you how to finish. You can see now that I have gotten it pressed pretty well down into my shapes, and you'll just want to continue working that, pressing it and rubbing it until all of your shapes show up very nicely. After you have that done, you'll flip it over and work your way around the circle, neatly folding the foil onto the back. If you need to, you can use a couple of pieces of tape to secure it. That is up to you. Then you will be inking, and again at school you'll have inking stations, which are basically just a box lid that you will set your project down in, and you will have ink. And I have gloves available. This ink does make a mess on your hands, so you'll want to get your hand in a glove. Take a piece of paper towel and dip it in the ink. You don't need a lot, just dip it in there and get some on the end like this. And then you're just going to rub. And you keep rubbing and rubbing until it gets down in those cracks. And it doesn't need to be really black. You just want it to kind of look antiqued and distressed. And this really will help show the relief of your shapes. So you continue rubbing the ink and covering the surface. Until the whole surface has been covered evenly in the black ink. So you may need to dip and rub, dip and rub. And when you're done then, it will have this aged look to it. That is how we are going to make our piece that looks like repousse.